Good evening, students. Today we are going to learn a lesson, second year lesson, prose lesson, the fringe benefits of failure and the importance of imagination. The fringe benefits of failure and the importance of imagination. It was written by J.K. Rowling. It was taken from the speech which was given in the graduating ceremony of the Harvard University on June 5th. J.K. Rowling gave a graduation speech, and from that speech this lesson has been extracted. And we can see the PowerPoint, the fringe benefits of failure and the importance of imagination. J.K. Rowling, she was born in 1965. And she was a British novelist, screenwriter and film producer. She is the author of the best-selling fantasy series Harry Potter series, comprising of 7 books. Her life is a rags to riches story. That is, she used to live on welfare schemes, and she was very poor, and she suffered with the dire consequences of the poverty. And then she came from a very humble background and lived on government welfare schemes till she came into limelight with her first book Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in 1999. So actually she was born in a very poor family, and she used to So this Harry Potter novel, this became world famous, and it was a great success, a craze among the youth and adolescent children. So Harry Potter series, we can see the movies also. The movies were also based on the novels written by J.K. Rowling, and she became all of a sudden, and overnight she became a celebrity and multimillionaire. Till then she was in utter poverty, and overnight she became a multimillionaire. So her speech was like, and 6 other books followed, and they sold hundreds of millions of copies and were turned into blockbuster films. And today she is one of the richest women with an estimated wealth of $600 million. She is also one of Britain's most benevolent celebrities, donating a large proportion of her fortune to charities. So most of her fortune, most of her riches were donated for charity activities also. So she is one of the most benevolent celebrities in the world. So the present lesson was taken from the graduation speech delivered by Rowling at Harvard University on June 2008. In this speech, Rowling recalls her own college life, which was impoverished by poverty and hardships. So when she used to go to college, it was like very, she had very meager resources, and so it was full of hardships. Her college days were full of hardships. She encourages the students to explore their capabilities with courage and confidence, and urges them to redefine the terms of success and failure in their own way. So she says, you should not get destroyed and defeated by life, but you should have the courage and the determination to move forward and to face the difficulties of life. So she advises the students to have empathy towards the sufferings of others, and suggests that they should help the poor and the needy. Rowling cautions the students not to confine themselves in their privileged life, but to have sympathy towards the underprivileged people in the society. She emphasizes the importance of imagination, which helps them to imagine and create a better world for everyone. So, on this wonderful day, when we are gathered together to celebrate your academic success, I have decided to talk to you about the benefits of failure. And as you stand on the threshold of what is sometimes called real life, I want to extol the crucial importance of imagination. These may seem quixotic or paradoxical choices, but please bear with me. Half my lifetime ago, I was striking an uneasy balance between the ambition I had for myself and what those closest to me expected of me. I was convinced that the only thing I wanted to do ever was to write novels. However, my parents, both of whom came from impoverished backgrounds and neither of whom had been to college, took the view that my overactive imagination was an amusing personal quirk that would never pay a mortgage or secure a pension. I know that the irony strikes with the force of a cartoon anvil. Now, so she says, uh, I have decided to talk to you about the benefits of failure and the importance of imagination. These are the two things, fringe benefits of failure and the importance of imagination. So these two things play a great role in our lives. That's what the message of J.K. Rowling's is. The She says failures are the stepping stones of success. So one should have the courage, confidence to take the failure as a stepping stone and to move forward with the uh, positive attitude to overcome the failure and to succeed further. So, J.K. Rowling's parents, both parents were very little educated. They came from impoverished backgrounds, poor background, and so they never had any college study. So they never had any idea about writing. She always wanted to write novels from her childhood. J.K. Rowling always thought that she will become a writer, but her parents never believed in her capability, and they never thought she will be successful. So they hoped that I would take a vocational degree. I wanted to study English literature. So she wanted to take English literature as choice. A compromise was reached that in retrospect satisfied nobody, and I went up to study modern languages. Hardly had my parents' car rounded the corner at the end of the road than I ditched German and scuttled off down the classics corridor. So ultimately, she has chosen modern languages and literature. English literature, she chosen modern languages. And I cannot remember telling any my parents that I was studying classics. They might well have found out for the first time on graduation day. Of all the subjects on this planet, I think they would have been hard put to name one less useful than Greek mythology when it came to securing the keys to an executive bathroom. So she started to read classics actually. Uh, she first joined in modern languages, but later on she uh, converted herself to this uh, classics. So she studied Greek mythology and all the classics. I would like to make it clear to parent in parenthesis that I do not blame my parents for their point of view. There is an expiry date on blaming your parents for steering you in the wrong direction. The moment you are old enough to take the wheel, responsibility lies with you. What is more, I cannot criticize my parents for hoping that I would never experience poverty. They had been poor themselves, and I have since been poor, and I quite agree with them that it is not an ennobling experience. Poverty entails fear and stress and sometimes depression. It means 1,000 petty humiliations and hardships. Climbing out of poverty by your own efforts, that is indeed something on which to pride yourself, but poverty itself is romanticized only by fools. So, uh, she says that we cannot blame our parents forever. Uh, there is a limit to this. So, in your childhood, maybe they may take some decisions on your behalf, but as soon as you become older enough, you will be responsible for your own actions and your life. So we cannot blame our parents till the end, and you have to take responsibility. And she says, her parents were also, they were very poor, so they expected her to come out of that poverty. They expected her to take up some job and to study some course which will enable her uh, for a job uh, which gives her steady income. So this is not an extraordinary desire or extraordinary wish, but every parent wishes that their children should be free of the problems and the difficulties of life. They should be free from the difficulties of poverty. So they too wanted her to be more successful, but it took some time. So what I feared most for myself of your age was not poverty but failure. Ultimately, we all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes failure. But the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it. So I think it fair to say that by any conventional measure, a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale. An exceptionally short lived marriage had imploded, and I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. So the fears that my parents had had for me, that I had had for myself, had both come to pass, and by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I knew. So after 7 years after her graduation, she was homeless, and she was married, but a very short-lived marriage that is, and it got imploded, and then she was a lone parent. She has a daughter to look after, and she was jobless, and there is no income, and she was living on welfare schemes. So she was leading a life of utter poverty, and whatever her parents were afraid about her and her own fears about herself, all of them came true. And she was an utter failure, and she was not able to support herself. She was living on government schemes at that time. So the now I am not going to stand here and tell you that failure is fun. That period of my life was a dark one, and I had no idea that there was going to be what the press has since represented as a kind of fairy tale resolution. I had no idea then how far the tunnel extended, and for a long time, any light at the end of it was a hope rather than a reality. So she felt like she was in a tunnel, dark tunnel, where there is no light or no hope, no ray of hope. And ultimately, she went through that. She faced that situation, and she sustained it. And for a long period of 7 years, she experienced it. And then, so why do I talk about the benefits of failure? Simply because failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might never have found the determination to succeed in one arena I believed I truly belonged. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still alive, and I still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea, and so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. So she fell off to the rock bottom. The life had knocked her down to the bottom, but again she sprang up with greater enthusiasm and vigor and vitality. So she, all the time, she was very determined, and she adored her daughter, and she wanted to support her, and she wanted to make it a success for her daughter's life. So she wanted to prove herself, and she stopped pretending to herself, and she wanted to do only one thing, that is the completion of her novel. So always she used to, she had an old typewriter with her, and she worked on it, and she started writing this novel, and she completed it. You might never fail on the scale I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. So she says, my failures are on a greater scale. You may not fail at that extent, but you will have, all of you will have to face failures, uh, failures of to some extent, may not be to the extent to which I experienced it, but failures of greater impact, failures of lesser impact. You may face failures of lesser impact. So failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. Failure taught me things about myself that I could have learned no other way. I discovered that I had a strong will and more discipline than I had suspected. I also found out that I had friends whose value is truly above the price of rubies. So then she realized about herself, and she found out that she had strong willpower, and she wanted to utilize it, and she wanted to, she had no pretensions, and she had no uh, failure taught her many things that she could have never learned them in any other way. So life has taught her many lessons, and she learned them successfully, and finally she became a great success. And she, some of her friends also helped her, it seems. So she says, I have friends whose value is more than real rubies. Uh, the knowledge that you have emerged wiser and stronger from setbacks means that you are ever after secure in your ability to survive. So you have come out of a setback, you have come out of a failure, means there is nothing else to go down further. So you have hit the rock bottom, and there is nothing else to go down, and only thing is you can rise from there, and you can grow from there. And this ability to come back out of the setbacks, this makes you secure in your ability to survive. You will never truly know yourself or strength of your relationships until both have been tested by adversity. Such knowledge is a true gift for all that it is painfully won, and it has been worth more than any qualification I ever earned. So um, this knowledge of yourself and knowledge of strength of your relationships is tested and proved only in times of adversity. So this helps people to this is a, this is the biggest gift, and this is the biggest qualification, J.K. Rowling says. No other qualification can enable you, no other qualification enables you to fight in life more efficiently than this. So this enables you with the efficiency to fight the difficulties of life. So personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisition or achievement. Your qualifications, your CV are not your life. Though you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse the two. Life is difficult and complicated and beyond anyone's total control, and the humility to know that will enable you to survive its vicissitudes. So, vicissitude is the difficulty. So, she says, what is life and what life offers you and how much you can learn from life, all these things, they can only be learned from the lessons of life, and no one can teach you these lessons in universities, in colleges, or in any other institutes. These lessons cannot be taught to you. These lessons are to be learned only from life and directly through experience. So this is the to face the vicissitudes of life, to face the difficulties of life, and the humility to know that life is difficult and complicated and beyond anyone's total control. There is no control over your so so these are the difficulties of life teaches us many lessons, and these lessons are more valuable than any other qualification which is acquired through university studies or any other studies. This is what J.K. Rowling says. So now you might think that I chose my second theme, the importance of imagination, because of the part it played in rebuilding my life, but that is not wholly so. Though I personally will defend the value of bedtime stories to my last gasp, I have learned to value imagination in a much broader sense. Imagination is not only the uniquely human capacity to envision that which is not, and therefore the fount of all invention and innovation, in its arguably most transformative and revelatory capacity. It is the power that enables us to empathize with humans whose experiences we have never shared. So now she moves on to the topic of imagination, importance of imagination. She says it's very important that children should have this capacity to imagine. They should develop this ability to imagine, and this improves their creativity. And so, unlike any other creature on this planet, humans can learn and understand without having experience. They can think themselves into other people's places. So, they can just imagine themselves, and they can just imagine situations and fanciful ideas. They can imagine any fanciful idea, and they can just think about it in a different way. And so, unlike any other creature, humans have this ability to imagine. And of course, this is the power, like my brand of fictional magic that is morally neutral. One might use such an ability to manipulate or control just as much as to understand or sympathize. So, and many prefer not to exercise their imagination at all. They choose to remain comfortably within the bounds of their own experience, never troubling to wonder how it would feel to have been born other than they are. They can refuse to hear screams or to peer inside cages. They can close their minds and hearts to any suffering that does not touch them personally. They can refuse to know. So many people in their lives, they lead just mechanically, they lead their lives mechanically, and they refuse to imagine the other people's situation, and they refuse to empathize with the other people. They don't know the difficulties of other people also. And they cannot empathize with the other people. So I might be tempted to envy people who can live that way, except that I do not think they have any fewer nightmares than I do. Choosing to live in narrow spaces leads to a form of mental agoraphobia, and that brings its own terrors. I think the willfully unimaginative see more monsters. They are often more afraid. What is more Those who chose not to empathize enable real monsters, for without ever committing an act of outright evil ourselves, we collude with it through our own apathy. So, if we are apathetic towards others' sufferings and others' feelings, we will be leading a poor life. That's what Rowling says. We should have the empathy to empathize with other people. We should have sympathy for the people in our surroundings, and we should have the kind heart and a mind which is understanding to understand the difficulties of other people. So one of the many things I learned at the end of that classics corridor down, which I ventured at the age of 18 in search of something I could not then define, was this, written by the Greek author Plutarch: what we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. So in her classics study, she learned it from Plutarch that uh, whatever change which is brought inside, whatever change we achieve inwardly will change our outer reality. So that is an astonishing statement, and yet proven 1,000 times every day of our lives. It expresses in part our inescapable connection with the outside world, the fact that we touch other people's lives simply by existing. So in order to bring change in the outer reality, we have to bring the change inside first. So that is what Rowling insists here. But how much more are you, Harvard graduates of 2008, likely to touch other people's lives? Your intelligence, your capacity for hard work, the education you have earned and received give you unique status and unique responsibilities. Even your nationality sets you apart. The great majority of you belong to the world's only remaining superpower. The way you vote, the way you live, the way you protest, the pressure you bring to bear on your government has an impact way beyond your borders. That is your privilege and your burden. So, see, here she addresses the Harvard graduates, and she says that this is what you are one of the you belong to the world's only remaining superpower, and your nationality sets you apart. Your country makes you special, your citizenship makes you special, and your study and the privilege to the opportunity which you got to study in the best institute of the world, that sets you apart from the other people, and you have to prove the worth of it. So she says the way you vote, the way you live, the way you protest, the pressure you bring to bear on your government has an impact way beyond your borders. That is your privilege and that is your burden. If you choose to use your status and influence to raise your voice on behalf of those who have no voice, if you choose to identify not only with the powerful but with the powerless, if you retain the ability to imagine yourself into the lives of those who do not have your advantages, then it will not only be your proud families who celebrate your existence, but thousands and millions of people whose reality you have helped change. We do not need magic to change the world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves. Already we have the power to imagine better. So she says, if you choose to use your status and influence to raise your voice on behalf of those who have no voice, if you choose to identify not only with the powerful but with the powerless, if you retain the ability to imagine yourself into the lives of those who do not have your advantages, then it will not only be your proud families who celebrate your existence, but thousands and millions of people will celebrate your existence. So here Rowling says you must have empathy for the poor people, for the underprivileged, for the people, those who do not have as many advantages as you, as many privileges as you. So you should identify yourself with them also, and you should be able to You should be able to identify with themselves, and you should be able to feel their sufferings, and you should be able to provide voice for them, for those who are voiceless. And tomorrow, I hope that even if you remember not a single word of mine, you remember those of Seneca, another of those old Romans I met when I fled down the classics corridor in retreat from career ladders, in search of ancient wisdom. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. I wish you all very good lives. So, as is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. So, this is what Seneca's quotation. She is quoting Seneca's quotation, and this is how Rowling explains the importance of imagination and the benefits of failures. In tomorrow's class, we shall continue with the second part. Thank you.